You have your places. Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone, both here in the room and those who are connected remotely. My name is Tuija Taus, and I'm a board member here at the SRB. And today it's my great pleasure to welcome you and to this panel and chair this panel called Towards 2028, the Shift to Crisis Readiness. Yes, the 10 first years of the single resolution mechanism may seem like a short time period in the European banking history, but in practice it's been a time of significant change. These were the years when SRM evolved from being a revolutionary idea just on paper to becoming a substantial part of the backbone of Europe's financial architecture. This panel discussion today will give us a chance to have a stock on how much we have done on building crisis readiness during these 10 years and how much still remains to be done. We all know that since 2015, the world has significantly changed, and financial institutions today face uncertainties and risks that go beyond traditional financial risks. Of course, geopolitical and cyber risks come to my mind first, digitalization serving as a catalyst, but out there is a world of threats and uncertainties and a lot of volatility. To answer those, it is key that SRB is ready with plans that are operational and executable. This will be achieved through regular testing, both bank-led testing and authority-led testing, guaranteeing that we have truly actionable plans, also to new risks and to new risk combinations. We are also stepping up dry runs among authorities to test and improve our cooperation, because of course cooperation between authorities is also an important part of the live actions in a real crisis situation. This joint effort will span over the next years and would not be possible without the cooperation and involvement of all the stakeholders presented today in this panel. With this goal in mind, we also commit ourselves to enhance transparency and further simplify our processes. Firstly, on transparency, since 2023, we have been releasing on the SRB website the list of all deliverables that we expect from banks the following cycle. This is something that very few regulators in the world do, actually. Secondly, on simplification, we are committed to going further in this area. We would like to take a more risk-based approach to ease the frequency of the deliverables we ask from the banks. Simplification and shortening of resolution plans we already implemented this year. And all this will help us to do our job even better, especially free up resources for more testing and for crisis preparedness work. Adaptability, simple but efficient actions, strong cooperation. I think these are the cornerstones of our future resilience. I'm very happy to have today a panel of experts who are bringing us a variety of perspectives. First, from the EU regulatory side, with Ugo Bassi and Sofia Toscano-Rico. Ugo is the Director of Banking, Insurance and Financial Crime at the European Commission's DG FISMA. And Sofia is the Deputy Director General in DG Horizontal Line Supervision at the European Central Bank. Second, from national resolution authorities with Álvaro López Barceló and Christoph Pucic. Álvaro is heading the Spanish Resolution Authority FROB, and Christoph is the board member at the Polish Bank Guarantee Fund. Then two professionals from private sector, Wim Mais, the CEO of European Banking Federation, and Stefan Knige, head of group resolution planning at Deutsche Bank. Warm welcome to the six of you. On the logistics, let me clarify shortly how I'm organizing this panel. First, each speaker will take the floor to share their perspective and reply to two pre-selected questions that should go deeper to these topics. And in the sake of time, please, our panelists, try to keep your answers concise. Then we start with the questions and answers session with this room. And please introduce yourself by name and organization when raising your hand. So let's start. And let's start with the broader EU perspective, and I would like to invite Ugo to share his point of view. So Ugo, in this context of increasing risks, such as heightened geopolitical and cyber risks, what are the initiatives the EU Commission envisages to ensure resilience of the financial system and to support crisis readiness? And how do you think these risks should be taken into account when preparing for a crisis situation from an operational point of view?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tuija. Thank you very much to the SRB for inviting me, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, you said it. I mean, the situation is certainly a word which is changing and has changed already. Risks of all type and nature are appearing and increasingly conditioning our day-by-day activity. You mentioned the cyber or hybrid risks, geopolitical tensions, conflicts, but one can also think about interference in information, information manipulation, climate change, natural catastrophes, and the combination, as you said it already, between them. In a world which is interconnected and more interconnected, of course, that makes it even more difficult to identify those risks and try to mitigate them. So in that spirit, of course, first of all, let me say that we at the Commission appreciate very much the approach which is taken by the Vision 2028 of the SRB, because the new approach moving towards really crisis preparedness and really try to test on an ongoing basis the crisis preparedness is certainly an exercise that we fully support. When we look at things from the perspective of the Commission, I would like to say mainly two things. When it comes to the financial sector, and in particular the cyber risks, but not only cyber risk, ICT risks in general, we have put forward the DORA legal framework, which is, of course, an element, a piece of the puzzle, which we hope will make the difference. It aims at harmonizing rules and practices in terms of resilience capability of national authorities in a way which is in line with the international standards, and of course the efforts that we've done to put forward a proposal, to negotiate it, and to have it adopted are efforts that we hope will help us basically to mitigate the risks that we were mentioning. Now the framework has entered into force earlier this year. Certain pieces of the puzzle, of course, are still missing, like in every case, some pieces of level 2 and level 3. But of course, we will have to work together to make sure that the full framework is in place as soon as it is possible. And of course, the SRB will have to take this into account. Last word on a more broader perspective, and when it comes to all sectors and all risks, the Commission, together with the High Representative, put forward earlier this year a preparedness strategy, which, as I said, aims at covering all type of risks and identifying all type of risks. This is just the introduction of a work stream which will take us busy for the coming weeks and months. And basically what we are going to try to do, together with the help of all the stakeholders involved and with the major role for member states, to map those risks, to try to identify them and try together to identify the measures which are needed in order to make sure that we are ready to experience them. The objective will be a report to be published in the future. Of course, these are early days, but this is a very important work which will basically try to protect our citizens, our life, our day-by-day life, as I said, across the board, and not only in the financial sector. We will see what it gives, but certainly it's a very important work stream which involves many services of the European Commission. And I would stop there for the moment. Thanks.
Great, many thanks, Ugo, for showing us how EU Commission now is working and preparing for the big preparedness topics. Okay, now let's hear next from Sofia and about supervisory perspective. My question to you is that considering your priorities on the emerging risks like geopolitical, cyber, etc., how do the supervisory actions in these fields contribute to crisis readiness? And more generally speaking, where do you see the biggest gaps between supervisory insight and resolution planning and readiness for crisis, and how are they being bridged?
Thanks a lot, Tuya, and congratulations first for the 10 years anniversary, and also thanks for inviting me to be here. Maybe I start with what Dominic said this morning. So we see supervision and resolution as a continuum. I would say more supervision and crisis preparedness as a continuum. And that means that many of the actions that we take in terms of supervision are contributing already to crisis preparedness. And I think you mentioned two risks out there, cyber and geopolitical risks as risk drivers. Whenever we are working in terms of supervision, our main goal is to have the banks being prepared to manage those risks in going concern, and that would always contributes to crisis preparedness. And in which sense? For example, in terms of cyber risk, we did, I think you might all know, but we did in 2024 a cyber resilience stress test with the banks. It was a joint exercise, really a learning exercise for all of us, both for authorities, but also for the banks. And what the aim is exactly to ensure that the banks are operationally ready to first have preparations in terms of how they are able to sustain an attack. But the stress test was mainly focused on how banks have or do not have the capacity to recover from those cyber attacks. So it was much more focused on business continuity and recovery. Also what we do in terms of geopolitical risks. So the aim is that each bank knows and assesses to what geopolitical risks they are more exposed to, what would be the situations that would impact them, depending on their business model, on the geographies where they operate. So there's a lot of idiosyncrasy as well in these exercises. And the aim is, again, to make sure that the banks are ready to first identify what are key vulnerabilities that may come from those risks, and that they are able to identify in advance what measures they would take in case those measures would be needed. So we put a lot of emphasis in terms of governance frameworks, stress test, their own internal stress test capabilities, in terms of identification, early identification of measures, early warning indicators. And this is a bit of a continuum. So also what we would like to see in recovery plans are exactly a bit of a continuation of if you have an early warning and then the situation continues to deteriorate and you need to start using the recovery measures, what measures would be there? How do you identify those? And then if things continue to go in the wrong direction, what elements are there in terms of crisis preparedness? And then you were asking in terms of gaps. So what between the supervisory insights and the resolution insights? The first thing, and that was also a big comment this morning, is the very strong collaboration between supervisors and the resolution authorities at all levels of the organization. Claudia Buch mentioned that this morning. So as you know, we attend the SRB board meetings, you attend our ECB banking supervision board meetings. We have senior management discussions very regularly. We have IRTs, so and our joint supervisory teams with your teams working together on bank by bank analysis in going concern and gone concern. And what we are trying to do is to try to have a common culture. And we do that. We have staff exchanges between ECB and SRB, for example, just an example. But we are also trying to increase the awareness from the supervisory side that they should think about when looking at their supervisory elements, think about how the bank would look like if it enters into a crisis, and from the resolution side as well, trying to have the IRTs looking at resolution plans already thinking about how these impact the banks even in a going concern manner. So I think we are doing a lot to try to have this continuum seen in all levels of the organization. And I would keep it here now.
Okay, thanks, Sofia. Very interesting your points about this continuum between early intervention, recovery, resolution, aligning, understanding better. Many thanks. Then Alvaro, now I would like to hear from Alvaro on crisis cases, because you have experience with crisis cases, especially Banco Popular in 2017. So following that experience, what are the main advances that have been made in resolution and in terms of crisis preparedness since those days? And what are the lessons learned from that case and other following cases, such as those 2023? And what new risks do you think could affect the crisis management of similar entities today, and how should we adopt those lessons for the future? So quite complicated, but you can do it.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Tuija, and good afternoon, everyone. We've certainly made a lot of progress, and we are certainly better prepared than 10 years ago. The Banco Popular resolution showed that the SRM was ready to deliver its mandate, meaning resolving a failing bank while maintaining financial stability and at no cost to the taxpayer. And both the SRB and national resolution authorities have made huge progress on so many fronts, the banks as well, in terms of resolvability. That said, we are probably facing a shift, or at least an evolution, in the nature and causes of financial instability, and this has been mentioned before, due to the emergence of risks, geopolitical, cyber, money laundering, and so on, and also a changing landscape in the financial sector, largely explained by digitalization. So the next crisis may be different. And I want to focus in particular on the unpredictability and the speed dimension of it. Indeed, rapid and abrupt crisis may be the new normal. We already saw it in 2023. We are no longer dealing with a slow-burning crisis driven by insolvency vulnerabilities. Today's events unfold rapidly, often unexpectedly, influenced by a loss of confidence. And social media, instant payments, online banking fundamentally change the dynamics. And this has major implications for us, resolution authorities. Through the resolution framework already anticipates the need for rapid reaction. But I would say that the reality is that authorities now have significantly less time to prepare. The traditional window for planning is shrinking. So what can we do about it? What are the lessons that we could draw from the 2023 crisis for resolution policy? Let me very briefly highlight a few points. Well, first, we need to make sure that our resolution plans are not only well-designed, but truly executable under real-time pressure. And this means having access to timely and granular data, conducting regular simulations, and maintaining close coordination with supervisors to make sure that we detect any early warning signs and act decisively. It also means that we should remove any legal and administrative barriers to the implementation of a swift resolution. Second point, we may want to rely even more on the sale of business tool. It has proven to be the most effective and credible one. It also contributes to post-resolution liquidity, and it allows for a rapid restoration of financial stability. Yes, finding a buyer could be challenging, and it is very often beyond the control of resolution authorities, but still we should be prepared to implement this tool whenever feasible. A third point, be prepared to deviate from the preferred resolution strategy. The reality of the last few years has shown that the resolution tool ultimately used can deviate from the initial plan. So agility and flexibility are essential to respond effectively and to tailor the approach to the specific circumstances of each case. As the mathematician Tom York said, success lies in being good at plan B. And the idea of introducing variant resolution strategies in the plans seems so advisable against this background. And last point, it's been said before several times this morning, we need to address the liquidity in resolution challenge. The single resolution fund, together with the backstop, may not be sufficient in certain scenarios. And in those cases, a central bank would play a key role in providing liquidity. So we have to make progress with EU-level discussions on guarantees and access conditions. So all in all, we are moving from slow-burning, solvency-driven crisis to fast liquidity and confidence-driven events. So our response frameworks, our crisis management framework, should evolve and adapt accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvaro. Nothing to add to those central elements of the nature of crisis now. Now, Christoph, it's your turn, and we get the Polish perspective now. What are your views regarding these new risks? And in your opinion, how should these risks be taken into account by banks? And do you have examples of Polish initiatives in this regard?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here, and happy anniversary to SRB and all the team. I'm from the resolution authority from the non-Euro country, but also from the bordering countries, so at the borders of the European Union. So we have maybe a little bit different perspective, like also Finnish colleagues or Baltic states. Maybe some few numbers. According to Eurostat, in 2024, Polish ranks second in terms of cyber attacks for the businesses. And the first, I think, was Finland. Also the specially created computer emergency response team noted 44,000 incidents, IT incidents in the financial sector. So this is a huge problem, huge demand for the resolution for the supervision authority. In Poland, there is a specific setup of the institutions. We are separate from the central bank and separated from the supervision authority, so we have to coordinate together. And after the outbreak of the war in Ukraine and after the unprecedented attack by Russia to Ukraine, the Polish Financial Stability Committee, which comprised of the central bank, the Minister of Finance, Resolution Authority, and Police Supervision Authority, we decided to also monitor the geopolitical risk. So we dedicated special assessment, and this Financial Stability Committee is the macroprudential supervisory body, and they take it as a systemic risk. They made recommendations to all the members, and the special role in this setup is for the Financial Supervision Authority, and Sofia explained it. We do similar, our supervision authority do similar job like the ECB. But what more? I think that the first line of defense are the institutions. So the financial institutions take all the burden, all the cost of the cybersecurity. So there is a necessity to go into the contingency plans, go into the strategy, go into the policy of the banks, and take or attract big attention to the cyber risk and geopolitical risk. We also, as a resolution authority, we decided to implement in the multi-annual testing program the part of the cyber resilience. So this would be also tested in accordance during the testing program. But also we focus on the liquidity, like it was said before, and today many times. We think that the geopolitical risk can also materialize in the problems in the liquidity in the system. So that's from my side.
Okay, thank you, Christoph. Very interesting to hear this concrete change of focus, what you have seen. Now let's move to the private sector with Wim. So as the representative of European banking sector, Wim, could you provide a view on the preparedness for the transition from resolution planning to testing? And what is the place of new risks in general from the banking sector's point of view? And how are these taken into account when preparing for crisis readiness?
Thank you very much. The direct answer has already been given. Indeed, you always need to prepare for plan B. And that is the first. But I'm extremely happy to be here because I have very good memories in the way this SRB grew up and started all through these years. And we've worked very closely together. And that is the absolute belief, the belief actually also in the banking union, that we have all pillars in place and that there is close cooperation between all the stakeholders involved, the private sector, but also indeed ECB, our SSM, our SRB, in trying to identify and then mitigate the risks that we see, and each, of course, within their role. And I would say that the SRB holds a special place in my heart, because I think that there are 8 people from EBF that chose a career in the SRB over the last 10 years, and that means that it's a very good place to work. Now, on the readiness, I had to smile when I, in the little 10-year movie, heard the former chairwoman Elke Koenig say, now it's time to work on the operational tests. And I thought, what have we been doing for the last 10 years? Because in my view, banks have very clearly and worked and very seriously worked on exactly bringing in the resolution plans, trying to get the testing ready, and delivered on the core building blocks in line with the SRB's expectations for banks. So I think that we are very much ready to move from paper plans to demonstrated capabilities, and that is necessary. I'm absolutely sure that banks are more prepared for resolution than ever before. It is really paying off. What I said, the close cooperation, but also, I would say, the ambitious push that both our SSM and our SRB put on banks can show that the work paid off. All the requirements, the planning, the guidelines, the testing, gives us the confidence that we are equipped to handle a resolution should the moment arise. We hope it doesn't. We hope it always stays a red telephone that never rings. But it has also been confirmed that banks are resilient in recent EBA stress tests. At the same time, and this is where I get to this plan B, it is this constant interaction that you test what is feasible and you test your resilience, always realizing that life is more creative than our imagination. So we should not become too extreme in our preparation, that we really try to create an environment in which we really test everything. So you need to, in my view, you need to ask yourself, what have we done, which tools are in place, and will they work also in the planned scenarios, but also in scenarios that cannot be planned? Because for me, resilience already starts and is essential when a bank is in operation, not when it fails, then you're too late. So banks should and are preparing for all sorts of crisis events and have proven resilient. And indeed, if I take the 2 most recent examples that we cannot plan, COVID-19 crisis and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, during these times, the close cooperation, but also the preparedness and the resilience of banks was proven. And it shows that we are doing the right thing, but it also shows that these were events that we could not plan or prepare for. So for me, the whole idea is that we are able to retain our critical functions. And again, we are far with that, but now broadening it indeed to the new and increase and new risks that we see, like geopolitical and cyber risks. In my view, these are new risks that we have to deal with throughout society. They are not limited to the financial sector or to the banking sector. Nevertheless, we need to work on them. And if I then look, and if I may ask them for something, I'm a believer in DORA. I think that the Digital Operational Resilience Act has brought a lot for banks. And if you look at cyber risks, the question is that everybody has woken up. Not only internally in banks are we looking at it, but also the SRB through Basel in operational resilience, through the SSM. And for me, my only ask is that we work together, that we are not going to stress test all at a different time with all different parameters, but that we closely work together. And for me, an example is the current work that we do together with the SSM. The cyber stress test was a clear example of a stress test that was first discussed and announced to take away as little as possible from the IT capacity and the operational capacity of the banks, and then gave incredibly valuable insights in where the weaknesses could be. A similar thing that we work together is our biggest nightmare, it would be actually a ransomware attack on one of the liquidity vulnerable parts of a bank, like the treasury or the dealing room. We are already working on these kind of black swan events, closely working with the SSM, closely working in a group of banks on what to do in these cases. And this is exactly the way in which we should go forward with these kind of events. But there are more. Third party and operating model fragility. We are third party. We are the providers of our basic services like cloud are so concentrated that this is something that we need to look at. At the same time, we've also seen examples where we're all dependent on let's say, office software that can be switched off from abroad. And we all know the cases of that. So this is again something that we need to look at. We've mentioned a lot the liquidity shocks, and these are indeed very important. And the discussion of the liquidity backstop is important and should indeed be embedded in the playbooks. And finally, another risk that that the banks are looking at is critical financial markets infrastructure, because we are all looking within the banks, but we are dependent on the financial market infrastructure that we have in Europe, and that is sometimes quite fragmented. So again, this is something that we look and that should be taken into account into the plans, and realize that this is sometimes events outside the banks that banks can hardly plan for, because if the financial markets infrastructure goes down, it is very hard to deal with that. So by describing, I think that we are in a good place, notably on the close cooperation between all the actors, our supervisors, the SRB and the banks itself. I think that the banks are deeply resilient and indeed have spent a lot of time on not only testing but also on readiness. But it is good to constantly look at the 5 different risks, the emerging that we see that I've mentioned, and take them in account. And in my view, plan for plan A, but be ready for plan B.
Thank you, Wim. That was a very clear message. So now, finally, Stefan will give us an operational perspective from Deutsche Bank. So from a bank-specific view and as a GSIP with global exposure, do you see any other new risks for resolution planning that are important for Deutsche Bank? Okay, quite many are already mentioned, so you can repeat them. And can you explain how do you integrate SRB's expectations and new risks into your internal crisis simulations and resolution planning?
First of all, thanks very much also for having me on the panel, and congratulations on the anniversary. As you mentioned, many of the risks had already been elaborated on, so I don't want to repeat them, but I want to pick up something that also Sophia said, that I think we need to have a clear view on where our vulnerabilities might be. And that is quite general. That can then be used for resolution planning. It can be used for DORA. And I might say that from a resolution planning perspective, we had been actually front-running this, because the concepts of critical functions that were also mentioned by Wim had been in the framework from the start, right? We had to identify critical functions. We had to identify core business lines, so what matters from the bank perspective for the market in terms of market stability, but also what matters for the banks themselves. So these 2 concepts had been like at the center of resolution planning, in particular then to inform operational continuity planning from a resolution planning point of view. So, but it's not only about the functions itself, it's also about identifying what constitutes the operations of these functions in terms of what are the critical systems that are needed, what are the critical third-party relationships, or also to Wim's point, the financial market infrastructures. So all of this transparency and inventory are a core part of like resolution planning preparedness. And I think it's also not like by accident that some of the emerging regulations like DORA are referring back to some of the BRD concepts like critical functions. So from that point of view, we think that from a resolution planning point of view, we can also inform these emerging initiatives. On the other hand, obviously more in-depth review, like in the cyber or IT environment, will also then benefit with a feedback loop to what we are looking at from a resolution planning point of view. On the testing, I think it's similar, in particular for operational continuity tests. It always starts with pulling the latest and up-to-date information, for instance, on our critical systems if we are doing like a system continuity test. And likewise, the feedback loop from these emerging initiatives will then also ensure that, also from a resolution planning point of view, we are keeping up to date in terms of where our vulnerabilities are. But I would also like to highlight that it's not just about like a forward look. I think there are also still some valuable lessons learned from past crises that we still need to work on. Testing was already mentioned, and I fully agree with what Wim said. Testing is there for quite some time already, but obviously we are like going deeper into these testing environments. And we did, for instance, a lot around our preparations for our preferred bail-in strategy in terms of understanding internal execution processes, understanding external execution processes, knowing how the handshakes should work, and that not only domestically, but also abroad. But in that sense, I think the crucial message here is that in the end, it's an authority-led process in resolution. So deciding and agreeing on it is not in the hands of the banks. We can only give as much confidence to the authorities that we understand our role and that we can execute our role. But in the end, the agreement and the will needs to happen on the authority side. And it was much talked about this morning in the first panel how important it is and that there is like much going on. And it's in that sense, I found it really comforting to hear the FDIC also like making this a key topic on there. And so I think it's maybe now more important than ever that also on this level, there is a clear and maybe firm commitment to actually execute a resolution.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. And thank you all for your valuable insights and laying the ground for the second round of questions. And now I think we will zoom a little bit more to crisis preparedness, but also simplification. And now again, let's start with Ugo. So Ugo, how will the push for simplification influence our preparation for crisis readiness, and how to strike the balance between simplification and oversimplification? And 4 minutes only.
Sorry?
4 minutes only.
Yes, no, I will try to be very, very short and look at this again from the perspective of the Commission, trying to bring a little bit of added value on this debate, which is, as you said, all over the place. I mean, we are constantly, let's say, under attack and under a very pushy request from all parts to simplify. Now, I like this subject very much because I'm not sure that everyone agrees on what this simplification is, should be, and what simplification means. Concretely, at the Commission, we are, for the moment, for the time being, in a kind of waiting mood, in the sense that we are waiting for the input which will come from all the organizations which are working hard on this, ECB, SSM, the SRB itself, EBA, member states, everywhere there is a task force on simplification which is producing input which we will look at extremely carefully. The objective being for us to produce in the banking sector this famous report which is planned for 2026 on the single market for banking and competitiveness of the banking sector, which is foreseen by law and which we will prepare, as I said, more or less in 1 year's time. What's going to be in there, we don't know precisely because we're waiting for the feedback, but we're trying to understand ourselves what simplification can mean. For the time being, I can give you only a few guiding principles that, of course, are subject to confirmation when we will see the input from the various actors that I've mentioned. And first of all, simplification cannot be oversimplification, cannot be deregulation, so simplification is not deregulation. Simplification is extremely important to the extent that it can achieve competitiveness, which, as you know, is at the heart of the political agenda of this new Commission, but at the same time cannot be traded against financial stability. So there's no sector, no economy which can be competitive if it is not, first of all, financially stable. So simplification can be declined into proportionality, into efficiency, into effectiveness. We will see how we will interpret this, and of course, we're gonna see whether the input that we receive will translate into proposals for changing level 1. It is possible, let's see. But just to conclude and stay in the 4 minutes, the overall conclusion is that simplification is not simple at all. It's complicated and it requires probably legislation, it requires time. So while we are ready to play our part, we don't want to give false expectations to the outside world. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for sharing a little bit light about what do you think about this simplification in the EU Commission, but we need to follow and give our contributions. So now, Sofia, you will bring the ECB angle to this topic. So what is your opinion about SRB and SSM cooperation in this fast-changing environment, and what can we do better, perhaps simpler and more efficiently?
Well, I think that the key element in a fast-moving environment is being able to set the grounds of a good cooperation in good times, but then be very agile in the way that we operate, and that we would need to react to a crisis situation. And in terms of preparedness on this cooperation, I think we are in a good place there. So the way that the SRB and the SSM are cooperating is quite intense, is on a daily basis, and that's the way that it needs to be. I think we were talking also about dry runs, tests, starting them now, also between the authorities. This started a very long time ago, not only with the SSM participating in all exercises that are conducted by the SRB, but also, as we heard this morning, also with other authorities. The SSM participates also in the TPLE together with you, with the UK and US authorities. And it's really through these exercises that we are able to identify pain points, so things that are still not working or working appropriately. And it's being a common practice that we need to continue to do these exercises, do lessons learned, and do a bit of a feedback loop on those. I think we need to continue to do them. It could be good to also involve the industry in some of these exercises. I think this might be a good something that we could plan doing. The second thing that I would like to mention is, and it's linked a bit to the simplification discussion, and where efforts are being done, but I think we can do even a bit more, which is to identify all the requests of information, that data that we need for both for resolutions and supervisory activity. I think a significant effort is being put in place that there are no overlaps, no duplication, that we really rely on a single reporting coming from the industry, and that we can have access to that. We moved, I would give an example on the liquidity reporting, for example, where we built a joint template, common template recently. So that is something that I think we can also still do a bit more. And it can also help the banks in terms of having a good data infrastructure that then answers to any requests that are coming from the authorities. So I think we are in a very good place, but there is always room for improvement. And if we continue working together and with having in mind that we want to be efficient, risk-based, and effective, I think we can still have more synergies and improve there.
Okay, thank you, Sophia. And good to hear that there are still areas where we can improve and to do more together and find efficiencies. That was a joke. Alvaro, now it's your turn. As an NRA, do you share the push for more practical approach with bank-led testing and authority-led testing also towards the less significant institutions under your remit in Spain?
No, absolutely. We fully support this move towards more practical and testing-oriented approach in line with Vision 2028 and also for less significant institutions, always guided by proportionality. We now have very comprehensive frameworks, including plans, national handbooks, operational step documents for each resolution tool, outlining roles, processes, decision-making, but documentation alone does not guarantee readiness. We need to test these frameworks through simulations and dry runs, as the colleagues have already emphasized. In particular, with regard to LSIs, they will now have multi-annual testing programs for the period 2026 to 2028, designed by authorities and including both institution and authority-led exercises. And we will move gradually, introducing more complexity over time. I mean, the goal is to have a testing roadmap for each institution that takes into account also its own context and resolution strategy. But we didn't wait to get started. Over the last few years, several LSIs have been asked in Spain to provide information on how to set up virtual data rooms that could be used for evaluation or for the implementation of the sale of business tool. And some of them this year are conducting simulations involving gathering the data needed for VDR construction and for evaluation. At FROB, we've also taken the initiative to test our own resolvability capabilities through dry runs. We should be constantly assessing our own execution capacity. And we've done both internal exercises and also other tests involving several authorities. The SRB, of course, other national resolution authorities, Bank of Spain, the Spanish DGS. So testing national level and also SRM level coordination. And these tests are very helpful. They allow us to refine processes, to identify potential data gaps, and also to improve how we work together. Going forward, we could and should go a bit further. As you just said, Sophia, we should probably involve more and more the institutions themselves in authority-led exercises. We could also move towards more complex scenarios. And then we may want to involve other stakeholders beyond the resolution area, of course, supervisors, but also market authorities, as well as national resolution authorities from third jurisdictions. So all in all, we fully support the approach and this move towards a more practical-oriented methodology, doing more and more simulations and dry runs. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvaro. Now let's continue to Christoph. You have relevant experience with crisis cases in Poland. So could you provide us some interesting insights and concrete examples on what could be done to improve crisis readiness on the basis of your experience?
Yes. We had 4 cases of resolution between 2020 and 2023. I think it's maybe not so widely known by other institutions, but we gain experience in this field, and I can share few. I can share with you my experience, but I think that the first case of the resolution, which was the resolution of the cooperative bank, was the most challenging for us because it was the first case and there were many of the operational problems. So imagine the second largest cooperative bank in Poland, which was very small in relation to the Polish banking sector and very tiny in relation to the European banking sector. It had around 600 million euros of deposits and 500 million of covered deposits. And this bank in 2019, this bank had critical functions. It had local critical functions because it was in some rural area where he had the access to the accounts of the local governments had to be continued. And in 2019, we were informed by this Polish Financial Supervision Authority about the problems of this bank, and we started the preparations. We couldn't find. The Polish Supervision Authority couldn't find a buyer. We knew that we should start the resolution. It was a capital problem, so the deterioration of the capital position. And from the beginning, we knew that there will be not enough capital, not enough the debt instruments to cover all the losses. And the first difficulty which we faced was the European regulations that to get access to the resolution fund, we have to cover all the losses. It was also the discussion with the European Commission, and because we couldn't find a buyer, we decided to use the bridge bank tool. But to start the bridge bank tool and to create this bridge bank, we had to use the capital, finance them from the resolution fund. To get access to the resolution fund, we had to cover all the losses. And the only possibility to cover losses was to partially write off of the deposits, of uncovered deposits. And to do that, we hired one of the biggest IT company in Poland. We suspended bank for the 3 days to made this operation, because out of the 200,000 accounts, we had select only 24,000 accounts and made partial write down of the amount of the deposits. So when we suspend the bank for the 3 days, starting from Friday and opening in the morning, on Monday, in 2020, when the people had the access to the internet, to the social media, so they went to the grocery, to the shop, they went to the ATM, and they couldn't get any money. And they start panicking. Even though we covered, all the covered deposits were guaranteed by the DGS, and the information was in place. There was an information from the government, information from the resolution authority. In the Monday morning, most of the customers went to the bank and to take off the deposits. So during the first month after the reopening of the bank, there was something like 50% outflow of deposits. We, as a resolution authority, also provided some special loan to provide the liquidity to this bank. So it was catastrophe for us. And but in fact, this bridge bank was sold at the end to the other company, but to the other financial institution after I think 1 year of the negotiations. But we, in fact. What was the problem? Because it wasn't the bail-in, there was the operational problem of the IT system. That if you could cancel, for example, half of the amount of the deposits in the system. But when you have to choose only part of the deposits and send them to the residual bank, and the other part of the deposits sent to the bridge bank, this is the operational issue which the system is not prepared in this situation. So the two other cases were the resolution cases with the use of the sale of business tool, but the last resolution case was also the bridge bank tool. It was quite systemic important bank in Poland in 2022. And there also was a situation that we couldn't find a buyer, but the amount of money, it was, I think, 10 billion euro, was twice higher than the DGS collected during the 30 years. So to go into the bankruptcy, we could make a systemic risk in the system. We could, you know, there could be contagion in the system, and other banks could fall down. So we also decided to use the bridge bank, and hopefully at the end there was a buyer. But in all subsequent cases of the resolution, we never touched the deposits, even covered, uncovered. We try to use all the possibilities not to use the deposit, not to bail in the deposits. This is maybe the problem of the IT system, maybe problem of the banks. But when you think about bank with 200,000 accounts, I'm not sure if the very big banks can handle it. And if this is the lessons learned, that we should operationalize our resolution plans, but also test the banks and real test the systems, if the systems works, because sometimes the legal framework maybe it's in place, but then the realization and the proceeding of the resolution is difficult. And maybe one more interesting case in this last case of the usage of the bridge bank, the financial institutions created special IPS. So this is something like institutional protection scheme, but it was totally private. So the private banks decided to support the financing of the process because they knew that if there will be bankruptcy of this bank, they in the second round they will be financing the DGS. And maybe few also remarks from me. We think that the suspension of the banks is also not valid during the resolution. In our times, when there is a social media and widespread of the information, very rapid, the suspension of the bank is not good solution. The right of the deposits or other consumer instruments, especially deposits, when it's difficult from the operational side, we try to avoid. And but very important is also the mindset of the resolution authority, that we have to do something. So where there was the situation that we faced during the process, we also have the backup of the government, the backup of the other institutions. We could also change a little bit a law, for example, to create to give the possibility for banks to create this special protection scheme. So this was also the flexibility of us and other institutions and flexible adoption of other possible ways to proceed to resolution.
Okay, thank you, Christoph, for sharing these experiences. Now, Wim, and you from the European banking sector, given the current emphasis on simplification, could you give us your views on how banks' capabilities can be tested simply but effectively, and keeping in mind the business needs of banks?
It's actually very interesting to listen to the practical example of Christoph. And indeed, it's almost bland to now move to the most used word in Brussels in 2025, the word simplification, although it may be challenged by the word competitiveness. We have written a report on all possible things, including resolution, and we've called it simply competitive, so then we have used all the words that we need. But if you look at it, indeed, it goes already back to what I said in the first round. We need to closely work together, and I understand and appreciate all the work that SRB has been done in trying to publish the new testing requirements. But if I use simplification, and I know the semantics of the word in Brussels very well, we don't mean simplification, not oversimplification and not deregulation, I would say we need to look at in how deep we are diverting banks' critical resources that are actually affecting the bank's competitiveness. So we need to test, but how, in what way can we make the impact on the bank's critical resources less? And sometimes if you look, and I have a list on my desk, where you see stress tests that worked very well because they were very well prepared, and the feedback that I got from the bank say, both the objectives were very clear and important, and the way in which it was conducted led to a good result that was manageable. And I have some bad examples. So we need to learn not only from these tests, but also from earlier crises, because what we need to avoid is if they are resource intensive, very complex, disproportionate, well, you know all the words, then it leads to a costly effect. One of the things that we discussed earlier is I see there is importance on trying to have realistic scenarios where you try to have 24-hour notification and real-life testing, but again you need to balance in the right way if this is the right way to get where. So giving a very short time for the testing of a business reorganization plan may be something that we want to reconsider. And then looking at building a testing environment, if it mirrors in a kind of laboratory the core systems of a bank, is very costly and disproportionate. If we can leverage on the current IT environment, it helps a lot already. Again, if we can minimize the business disruptions by either using synthetic data or mass data or running after hours, all these little things work very much while keeping at the same time keeping the principle and what we want to test and the partnership in our resilience very clear. So what I see going forward is we need to really look together at the processes and the effectiveness. And as I said, we have good examples and examples where we could improve. We have lived through actual crises and we can learn from them and what was most effective in our testing environment. I think that in simplification takes away a lot of the burden. That is one. Then, of course, MREL. We haven't even mentioned MREL in this panel. The calibration of MREL requirements is necessary to reflect the actual resolution strategy of each bank, particularly if we use transfer tools alongside bail-in mechanisms. And this, I almost sound a little bit, because I've said this many times before, and I know that this is easier said than done. We need a more risk-based and a proportional approach with clearer guidance and reduced duplication. Now, this is a very easy sentence for me to say, but this is a very hard thing to do. But what I mean is it basically summarized what I said earlier. It means close cooperation. It means close planning and cooperation, as was already mentioned, between the SSM and the SRB. It means a close engagement with the supervised, so we can plan. And it means that we really look together at what method we use, what objective, of course, everybody within their role. But if we can use if we can disrupt the core system as little as possible. And I'm very happy to discuss further our Simply Competitive report, but also to go into that dialogue, because this is a place where simplification can be done by really looking at the way in which we do things rather than to change the rules at the outset, and that gives us a lot of chance for success.
Yeah, thank you, Wim. That was a really important element to this discussion, and we are also taking it very seriously at the
You're
SRB.
the victim.
Stefan, now we need to hear from you. Could you provide a brief description of the testing framework you have to date at Deutsche Bank? And perhaps you can share some interesting lessons in the area of testing. And in your opinion, are there missing areas? And what can we do more, perhaps?
Yes, sure. Maybe not exactly more, but I will come to this. So, planning is like a core part of our framework. Since some years, actually, we have a master playbook for our bail-in resolution strategy, where we, in so-called swim lanes, have documented groups of processes that would need to run in parallel. For instance, around the governance over a resolution period. Obviously, your core part being the bail-in processes that we need to execute, but also topics around operational continuity, communication processes over resolution, but also how we would draw up a business reorganization plan post-resolution. And we also have a framework around this in how we ask our stakeholders actually to test these processes. We currently have this on a biannual basis where we are asking in 1 year to do a test, to then have the next year to process any lessons learned that might come out of this. And as a more recent development, we also appointed an independent observer in order to join this test. This is our internal audit function, so it's still internal. But we already had 3 tests this year where then our internal audit function actually accompanied the tests and also then drafted an independent observer report. So that's in a nutshell our testing framework. So I think we are well prepared, I would say. Obviously, we have now the multi-annual test program and the updated testing guidance, so we need to adapt this here and there. But I think in principle, we are in a good position with our framework that we have. In terms of what is missing, I don't think maybe necessarily there is something missing. I think there needs to be, still a focus on ensuring the testing is around the preferred tool to start with, so that the bail-in processes, for instance, work. I think the testing requirement and the resolvability assessment linking, like testing to each of the dimensions, maybe this is a bit too much. I think there are some, for instance, aspects of governance as audit, which is part of like the expectations for banks in the principles. I think that there is not much to be tested. I think also not around like resolution planning in itself, which is obviously also a part of the expectations for banks. On the business reorganization plan, I mentioned we have the processes outlined in our playbook of how this would be done in an accelerated manner. We have also had several rounds of drafting business reorganization plans, but I think that's maybe something where it would be a bit disproportionate to actually do this really in a test within a month or so, because in the end, this is the annual planning process, right? We are doing this every year and also like during the years. So I think we pretty much can do this. We could also, if we deflect enough people from the daily jobs, do this within a month, but will we really learn something from it? And is there not a trade-off then with like disrupting the business too much? So in that sense, I think the focus should stay on the preferred resolution tool. On that, I think a valuable lesson learned from our end, and that was touched on a couple of times, I think also in the morning and today, the handshake between the banks and the authorities in this process, right? It's actually built into the regulation. So if you have a bail-in process, it always starts with delivering like on very short notice, like a bail-in data set together with an update on what the balance sheet looks like. The authorities then need to draft a resolution order. Before it's published, it goes back to the banks so that the banks can do an impact assessment to which degree the desired outcome, which is then like enshrined in the bail-in order, is actually what the bank would publish the next day. And I think that we went through such a dry run together with the authorities, and I think that proved very helpful. But I think it's also needed in order that people know what they are supposed to receive, and if they receive it, they know how to consume it. So I think that is an important lesson learned, and I think focus should stay on the resolution tools themselves.
Thank you, Stefan. And thank you all for your very interesting views. I'm sure that the audience wants to ask some questions, and I see that we have a few minutes left. So let's move quickly to the questions and answer sessions. And please introduce yourself before asking the question. Who wants to ask something? There.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the session. It's Matthijs van Oors, ING. Let me go and stand up. Or, oh, there's on the other side as well. Okay,
Okay,
I'll proceed.
so we have-
Sorry, my apologies.
So two questions.
So basically, I think within ING we're also looking, as a colleague like Stefan, we're really looking at all these requirements on testing, which are very, I would say, extensive. And what I would like to, maybe an invitation to the SRB is some good practice from the ECB, especially on the recovery plan side, is that the ECB allows us to evidence capabilities for recovery options with the experience we have. So basically we have a lot of experience on securitizations, on covered bonds, on issuance and all kinds of options. And I think you always allows us to use that to evidence our capabilities. So there is not actually, in some cases, a need to test it if you have similar processes. And I would like, maybe it's a question to the SRB, but also the other authorities also on how do you see that? Because I think that will be very pragmatic. So a question of how would you deal with, let's say, capabilities are more or less the same and can evidence and use to do evidence. So thank you very much.
And this question goes to who wants to answer? I think it was more to SRB, but if somebody of you would like to answer? Alvaro? No, it's me. I mean, yeah. I mean, it was a very relevant question. We've been thinking about it a lot. This I can tell you. And we have defined, as you know, we every year define common testing priorities, but we are also looking bank-specific testing priorities and tailoring the requirements, of course, on the basis of the bank. So taking into account the situation of the bank, because some banks are very well advanced on some areas. We heard today a lot during this panel about the fact that many banks have been testing a lot. So testing is nothing new to banks. So it's really important point. Thank you. Second question, because 1 minute left, then I need to
No, I will be quick. Thank you. This is Eduardo Oila from BBVA. That's a message that has been mentioned. I mean, I think DORA is coming, resolution, and we see from the perspective of the SSM and SRB, a room for simplification in the sense that we banks are working on operational resilience. And at the end, we see that this is perfectly fit for OSIR, for continuity in resolution. Also, DORA is covering or should cover FMIs. It was mentioned before. So I think there is here an enormous opportunity for the banks that we are working on operational resilience to leverage fully on that for OSIR capabilities. And the message will be for both SSM and SRB. I mean, it's good you're working together. It's the same that, for example, the liquidity exercise was a joint liquidity exercise. So the way DORA is going to be deployed and the way the SSM is going to be checking it out can be done hands with the SRB for the OSIR capabilities. So this is a huge opportunity for the bank just working once for the same purpose. That was my message.
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot for this message. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to give you, Sofia, the floor. But anyway, we took good notes, and it's an important point. Thank you for raising this. So now I need to conclude this panel very quickly. I think it was very reassuring that we seem to be on the same page on the crisis readiness topics and also on the testing topics. And what was stressed here was that banks are quite prepared, well prepared. It's nothing new. Let's challenge us more. Let's do more together. Let's go further. Let's organize tests together with banks, mixing banks and authorities, not only banks testing and authorities testing, but common testing. And then let's learn from each other on many topics, cyber topics, DORA, etc. Let's do together. I think that was the main message of this panel. So many thanks to all of you and our great panelists. And now I really hope that you have time to join our final session. There will be a closing speech by the commissioner and a reception, etc. So thanks a lot, everyone.